Good afternoon. Welcome to Asking for a Friend. Hello, Katie. Hello, Ben. Great to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So if you haven't been to an Asking for a Friend event before, this is an initiative by Never Not Creative, Young Bloods and Mentally Healthy. So the change group that we have in our industry to improve mental health exists because we wanted to create a safe place for where you can ask the unaskable. Questions that you're worried about, how people might treat you at work, or whether your boss might think of you differently, or you get passed up for a promotion because of something that you've said. So we're bringing together industry leaders and mental health professionals to give non-judgmental responses in a safe, anonymous environment. So before I introduce our guests in more detail, a little bit of housekeeping and how this works. So anyone who's here, you'll be able to ask questions in the tab on the right. So please ask those as we go. We have some questions that have come in that's been sent through the site beforehand. So we'll go through those first, and then we'll get to questions live after that. If you need more immediate help, so if your question is relating to a mental health challenge that you actually have right now and that you need some help, you can check out this, not that link, here we go, sorry. You can check out this link, and there's lots of links to resources, but most importantly, Lifeline, if you need anything right now. A caveat, everything that we do with Never Not Creative and Mentally Healthy is volunteer run, and so essentially it's unofficial, and we're a bunch of people using community to come together and tackle the challenges that our industry is facing. So with that in mind, remember, your question's anonymous. We don't have context around your question, but we will do the best that we can to give you an answer, and I guess the first step in you trying to get some help and support and advice around that challenge. You can also, there's a chat there as well, if ever you want to add just nods of agreement or anything like that. But please do get your questions in as we go through. So with the housekeeping out of the way, I'm delighted to welcome Katie Fedor. Katie is a registered psychotherapist working in clinical practice. Katie trained in process-orientated psychology, which integrates Jungian psychology and Eastern philosophies and offers a holistic understanding of the human psyche. Her belief is that we're all individuals, and therefore so too is our best path to healing. Katie's passionate about emotional health and fostering well-being. She works from the new sciences of the heart, brain, and biology to help her clients to come into closer connection with their mind and body. She had a multicultural life and called many places home, but for the past 9 or 10 years, that's been here in Australia. And she's also a mother of 2 beautiful children. It's also not her first rodeo. Katie was an OG for Asking for a Friend right at the beginning. So welcome, Katie. It's great to have you back.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And we have Ben Miles. Ben has established a reputation as one of the world's best brand thinkers and is known for his transformative work with brands and company culture. He's helped shape and shift some of Australia and New Zealand's biggest and boldest brands, including Telstra, IGA, Toll, Westpac, Sky New Zealand, Foxtel, and a number of startups. Ben subscribes to the complementary forces of optimism and realism. He believes in creating diverse environments where people are free to explore, collaborate, and innovate, and that the best ideas are born from romanticizing the problem, understanding human behaviors, and using a healthy dose of lateral thinking. Ben is also driven by social good, believing that design has the ability to make positive change in the world, and in 2018 was recognized by Fast Company for a World-Changing Ideas Award for the project A Mate. Well, Ben, great to have you here, mate.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I mean, it's a bit of a privilege to be here, really. I think it's such an important subject, and obviously, Kate and I will do our best to answer some of these questions and see if we can shed light.
Brilliant. Well, let's get into it. So, Katie, we're going to come to you first. Now, there's no surprise. We're all New South Wales. What are New South Walesians called? I don't know. Is there a thing for? Anyway, we're all in New South Wales.
I know the answer to, Andy. Please, that would be.
That's not a question that came in. That's just my question. But anyway, so. No surprise, this one actually is related to COVID. So this latest lockdown just seems to have no end in sight. I feel really trapped, and I'm worried that our business will start to feel the impact soon, which could see me out of a job. I was only hired recently. This constant worrying is keeping me up at night, struggling to stay creative with my work. Any advice?
Yeah, sure. And the first thing I would say here is that I imagine that this is probably a shared experience and far more commonly shared than not. So thank you for asking it, because I'm sure in answering it and addressing it, we're going to help lots of others. I think I always look for what is the longing under the question, as in, or under the disturbance. What do you really want or need? What are you seeking? And I think in this case, obviously, it's certainty, isn't it? It's some form of security. It's an idea of safety. And there are two ways to ascertain that in life. And one is outside of yourself, and you just kind of sit back and cross your arms and you go, I'll just wait until all these things are in harmony, and then I'll feel regulated. Or the other is inside of ourselves, in our ecosystem, and saying, I will be, as best I can, the guardian of that. So I would say that I don't have a crystal ball. None of us do. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I do know that if you project yourself too far into the future, that you're likely to go with a negative story, because we all have a negativity bias, and you're likely to catastrophize, and that's going to exacerbate the stress. So my advice would be come into this present moment. And for that, you can use your senses. What can I hear in this moment? What can I see in this moment? In this exact moment, are you safe? And so I just bring the circumference in a lot tighter. Maybe just take it day by day, internalize it, be your own governor of self, and turn the eye inward.
That's great. So that's sort of emotionally almost like, how do we regulate ourselves? There's also a bit here of like staying creative in this question. Ben, we could have asked ourselves this question. It's certainly been on my mind.
Yeah, look, I think it's such a great question. And to Katie's point, something that we've all kind of been feeling over the last 15, 16 months in so many different forms. We had the kind of bliss of feeling like, Australia's done really well, we're out of it, and then we're back into it again. So those kind of anxieties sort of peak themselves again. I think what we've proven last time around is that we can kind of get through this, and that we'll get through it again. And it's about that kind of being adaptable, thinking about different ways of dealing with this situation. I think just building on what Katie talked about, from myself, it's about support network. So knowing like who are the people you can talk to about different things. And support network it's actually being really thoughtful about who you're talking to for specific things. Some people you're talking to because you're looking for a positive moment. Some people you're looking to because you want inspiration. So trying to figure out who's your support network and how do you go to them for different feelings. But from a creative perspective, it's really tricky. I think it's if I take it for myself, I think over the last 15 months, building new practice at RGA, it's been very stressful. But I've probably thrown myself deeper and tried to maximize the time that I've got from working from home. Also knowing when to shut down and stop, but being thoughtful with my time, whereas before there were so many distractions. Now I'm trying to be way more focused with my time to be more creative. So I suppose it's trying to maximize that time that you've got and using it for positive good, and using it to explore what's possible. But so yeah, I'd say that thinking about the support network, and then thinking about how you manage your time to explore the things you wouldn't normally get to be able to do.
Yeah, great. Okay. So Ben, I'm going to stick with you because this next one, I'm sure you have experience with. This question was sent in twice, and it sort of escalated in frustration, I think, in the second time it was sent. So bear with me, it was a little bit longer than the first one. But how do you deal with the accounts team who constantly give creative and design direction to the junior designers, effectively undermining the authority and credibility of the senior design leadership team? This issue has been addressed directly by the senior leaders in our agency, and the accounts involved have been told they have overstepped boundaries and explained what they can or can't do, as well as what they shouldn't do. It was fine for a while, but then it's happened again and again. I'm one of the senior designers and have confronted the person directly when it happened, but I feel like I'm a broken record. I've been told to change my behavior, be even more assertive, but I think it's utterly inefficient use of my time and energy trying to police or address this when I could be using said time and energy doing actual work. Also, if they weren't overstepping boundaries in the first place, then we wouldn't have to waste our resources trying to fix this. Help, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. What do we do in this situation?
Wow. So there's a massive question. It's brilliant. It's such a good question. And I will apologize. My dog is barking in the background. Not sure why. he wants to put some questions on here too. But yeah, what a gigantic question. And it's also a question that I have experienced many times. And I think everybody has their own kind of story that's related to something like that. And of course, there's a million ways that you can also answer that question. It's tricky to understand the nuances that sit behind that, the kind of, the drivers behind each of the individual. What's driving that person to want to feed back? What's driving your response and your reaction? And trying to really understand all those different inputs to better understand the outputs. I think if I, again, bring it back to the experiences that I've had, we've moved into a world where we want to give the platform to everybody. We want everybody to have an opinion. We want, whether you're an accounts person, you're a project manager, you're a creative, you're a cleaner, we want everyone to have an opinion, which is brilliant because problem solving and ideas can come from anywhere. But sometimes it does create complications because all of a sudden someone that's got 15 years experience or 10 years experience might be overruled by someone with 1 year's experience, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it's how you then manage that. Is it coming from the right place? Is the person doing it because they genuinely care, or they're actually trying to be difficult, or they think they know better? So depending on the inputs is then how you decide to respond, because that's really all you can do. You get given a situation and you're in control of how you respond to that. And I think what I would tend to do, if there's a situation where you have the account side talking directly to the junior members of the team and almost kind of sidestepping you in that conversation, and I imagine this is exactly what you've already done, it's really important to have a conversation with that person, to talk to them about it, to better understand, again, in a non-confrontational way. Remove your kind of emotions and actually be really practical about what you're trying to achieve. So, okay, if you're giving feedback, is that feedback positive or is that feedback negative? If the feedback that's coming is negative, therefore it's demotivating the team, what you can then say is, hey, can we start with the positives? Can we talk to the team about the things you like, the things that are going well? And then let's start to move into the things that need to tweak and change. Ideally, you're the filter. But if you are being sidestepped, it's how you manage that situation. And also checking your ego too, because everybody has a little bit of an ego. So is it that person is genuinely trying to add value, but you're worried about how you are then perceived in front of your team? And if that is one of the problems, the best thing to do is, as long as you know that you're doing the best thing you possibly can, it's okay to give somebody space. So lots of different ways to respond to that situation. Remove your emotion from the situation to take a higher altitude approach. If it is because that person is trying to undermine you, have a positive conversation with them, but remove emotion from that conversation and get to the points, and then ask if they can start on the positive. If it's your ego, then try to understand how you can better feel confident in yourself to enable everybody to have a voice.
That's a great answer. Is there any from your perspective, Katie, around dealing with like feelings of being undermined? Is there anything that you?
So look, it's a boundaries issue, and I agree with everything that Ben said. In that, again, it comes back to this really stabilized sense of self, which is an internal metrics. So the fact that somebody else is commenting is neither good or bad. It's the story you tell yourself around it that gives it the charge. So to use something that nobody has too much an investment in, let's go with my jumper, okay? I'll boundary this jumper. And let's say that I've decided that I really like this jumper, right? And I actually think the color looks good on my skin and the price point was great. I live in Barrel, it's cold, it's a lovely natural wool, tick, tick, tick. I'm cemented in my view of the jumper, right? Now, Andy, I come and meet you for lunch and you say to me, well, you know what, Katie, I really like that jumper. Right? I'm like, thanks, mate, but you have not made me like it, right? I already hold that for myself. Now, where it gets interesting is the reverse. Later that day, I meet Ben, and Ben goes to me, oh, God, mate, the jumper. Do I, if I'm non-boundaried, if I'm not clear in how I feel about something, I'm going to collapse into that. I'm going to tell myself a whole story about how maybe I feel shamed, maybe I feel embarrassed, maybe I feel less than, I should have never bought the bloody jumper, what's Ben going to think about me? You can see how that horse is going to bolt really quickly, right? So I'm with Ben on this one. In the question, I think there was something about I've been told I need to police better. I think the person that we police is ourselves. Right? Thank you, mate. I think we police ourselves, we police our experience. And so when I meet Ben, and if he were to say I don't like it, I catch myself. Before I fuel that narrative, I go, what's really happening for me? Oh, he's triggered the part of me that's insecure. Okay, I'll work with that.
Excellent. I think that's probably even, I reckon that's bound to have headed off a few other questions as well. Kind of, what story you tell yourself is always excellent. One thing I forgot to ask both of you, actually, in the bottom right hand of your screen is a little bell. If you can mute the notifications, that would be great. That's my fault. Cool. All right, Katie. Now, this one, is let's take it as a genuine question, and I think we've got to be realistic around that. Some people are doing this right now. So this is the question: how do you feel about the general advice on TikTok? I know there is potential for fake news, but I take the things they say so seriously. Katie.
So I'm going to go in, and you could swap out TikTok for Facebook, swap it out for ABC News, swap it out for Sky News, swap it out for your mate Dave, swap it out for anything, right? Our mental health, like our physical health, is contingent on what we feed it, right? So we all know that what we eat, what we consume, how much we move is going to have a direct impact on our physicality. And the same is true of our mental health, right? So the people that we hang out with, the ideas that we ingest, what we read, what we watch, and again, go back to what I said about the negativity bias. And I think that the media is prolifically good at exacerbating anxiety and catastrophizing. And if this isn't serving you, which I assume it's not in your question, then I think you need to help manage how much of that you let in. Because you are the governor, you must govern your life, or it will govern you. So if it isn't serving you, you'll be amazed how quickly your state can change if you do something different, like, go outside, go for a walk, do something else, feed another aspect of you, because our state elicits the story, and the story being, oh my God, I'm useless, they don't like my jumper, oh, he loves my jumper, I feel good at, The story then affects your physiology. So the body gets the memo, oh, good vibes, right, quick, pump all the happy endorphins, right? And that then becomes your lived truth. So if it's not making you feel good, it's like a Big Mac, I would suggest that you don't eat it, or eat less of it, or just don't eat it all the time.
Well, that's a tough one. Big Mac makes you feel really good in the moment, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then afterwards.
I won't lie. I don't mind a Big Mac meal. I'm half American, so that's the excuse there. But I know that if I eat it all the time, I can have it once a month, and that's okay for me. But if I have it every day, within 3 days, I'm going to be feeling pretty crappy.
Ben, I think there's probably something relating to this as well around, this is like what you choose to take in from social media as well, right? Like, creative industry, notorious for someone putting some work up and then it getting shot down. I know we used to work together, and piece of work would go up, and suddenly we're all on tenterhooks waiting for brand new comments to come through. How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, because it's a little bit of that anxiety that drives you to be better, that drives you to be more creative. So there's going to be people out there that are looking at what you're doing. They want to see what's coming next. So it's depending on how you then respond to that. So you take those feelings and try to repackage it in a way that pushes you forward to try to be better. But for yourself, you want this to be brilliant. So you're always going to get people that just don't like what you do, and you can't please everybody. And naturally, you know, depending on what your personality type is, if you're a people pleaser, that's going to be harder, but you just can't. And if people just like everything you do, then maybe you're not also pushing yourself hard enough to kind of do something, because if you've offended somebody, then you probably inspired a million other people. So I think it's, again, just kind of keeping that frame, and then deciding what to read and what not to read. Like, do you even need to look at the comments? Because actually you're doing it because you want to put something forward. And that kind of comes to just understanding how do you get a mixed balance? So if you're reading something, then try to look for the other side of the story. So if you're reading an article, actually, what's the other side of the fence talking about? So that you can then have your own opinion. Rather than listening to one perspective, you're listening to multiple perspectives, just like the comment feed, when people are reviewing your work. There's multiple perspectives, and then you take out of it what you want to take out of it.
Yeah, great advice. I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to ask now that, like, we're coming to the end of the questions that came in beforehand. So we've got about 2 or 3 more to go. If you've got questions, you're listening right now, you can see that Ben and Katie are awesome. So please add your questions into the questions tab, and we'll get to them shortly. Okay, back to you, Ben. I'm graduating design school soon and super anxious about how I will financially support myself next year, not only in the context of COVID, but I don't want to be stuck in a typical graphic design job where I design emails all day. I know it's a competitive industry, and all the people I've talked to have said that they got lucky. Any tips for new grads entering the workforce?
Yeah, definitely. Like, such a brilliant question. Like, it's such a tricky time right now because, you know, because of COVID, there was a period where people stopped hiring people. If you were hiring someone, you were looking for someone who had loads of experience. That's starting to change again. But, you know, I imagine there are some of the anxieties that graduates are facing last night. Well, how do I get myself into a place that I can't even physically meet people? Anyway, let's remove that for a second and get into the question, which is, you know, I'm working on it potentially in a business where I'm not doing the most creative stuff. What do I need to do? And I think when I meet...
Oh no.
That's never happened before. Anyway, what we'll do is, hopefully Ben will come back. Probably, I'm sure, like somebody's chewed through a cable or something, or hopefully it's not that bad.
That's what the dog was warning him about. Oh, here he is.
Here he is. He's back.
I was just giving myself a breather from the tricky question. Yeah, just kidding. I'm not quite sure what happened, so apologies.
You're breaking up. No.
Can you hear me okay now?
We're all good.
Fantastic. Yeah, sorry about that. Not sure what happened. But I think where I was at with the question was, you're in a job that you're not particularly inspired by. That's unfortunately at times a reality of life. And then again, it's like, okay, cool. What do I do next? And when I meet people, when I interview people, I love it when I meet people that says, hey, Ben, I've been in this job and I'm not inspired, but check out all this other stuff I've been doing. So it's like, hey, I'm not going to show you this stuff. Of course, you can see it if you want to see it, but I'm not inspired by it. But the stuff I've been doing over here, I've been finding self-initiated projects. I've been tag teaming with my friend who's got this amazing mental health initiative, and I help them build this identity. Or I'm working on this strategy piece to help a friend. That's the passion that is infectious, that you're stuck in a situation that you're not particularly pleased with, but rather than just sit there, of course, we need the income, we need the money, but then how do you segment time to enable you to work on those kind of projects that when you do get the opportunity, all of a sudden people lean in because they're like, wow, okay, you had that job, but you're doing this. You get to see the real you get to see what you're passionate about, and ultimately you're going to inspire the person you're talking to.
Are there any examples of people that have caught your attention, like early on? You know, they've been able to get a foot in the door with you, whether at Interbrand or RGA?
Yeah, I think we often, you know, we'll look for a book. We'll ask a couple of questions like, what part did you play? What role did you play in those projects? Because often there's a gigantic project and you're not sure exactly what part people played. So I'll usually sort of interrogate that a little bit. And then I'll say, like, you know, what else do you do? What are the other things you're interested in? What's other stuff that you've done just because you love it? And then you really start to see the real person. And I can use myself context. When I left university, I didn't get a job straight away. I worked in a retail store in London. I didn't enjoy it. It was pretty boring. I was trying to sell clothes I wasn't inspired by. But I spoke to the manager and I said, hey, can I rebrand your store for you? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And that got me my first job because I didn't have a particularly great portfolio, but they loved the passion behind making good of a negative situation. They could see the kind of the want to continue to push things forward. So I think I can talk from firsthand experience. And yes, I've seen a million portfolios, and I'm always looking for those people that just go that extra mile.
Okay, great. Katie, anything to add on that one?
I just love it. I love hearing you talk, because the thing is, Ben, as you go into it, even your enthusiasm in answering it comes through. And that's the thing, where focus goes, energy flows, right? Yeah. So if you want to feel inspired, do inspiring things. If you want to feel more joyful, do things that bring you joy, right? And it doesn't have to just come through the expression of the contractual work. You know, it can come in your friendships, it can come in what you do in your spare time, it can come in all sorts of ways. So really what I hear there is kind of an aggregation, a momentum, an expansion of energy. And then however that expresses will fulfill you. In fulfilling you, you'll be in a better state. In being a better state, you're going to tell yourself a better story, better emotions, better result, and it will feed unto itself. So I really enjoyed listening to you answer that.
No, I love that. Thank you. I think, you know, just building on that a little bit, it's also that once you've done something you're passionate about, you can share it with someone to actually ask for feedback. So, hey, how can I make this better? Like always being open to feedback and going, I've done this, I'm pretty proud of it, but I'd love you to help me make it better. That's like a really great conversation to collaborate on. And, you know, someone once said to me, about reading books. Find books that you're interested in and then you finish them. And it's the similar thing with find creative projects that you're interested in, and it's stuff that you really believe in, and then you're going to push it and really make sure you do it and you finish it.
What is your mate? I remember you had a phrase, and it's something around positivity, or what's it that you always used to say?
Positude.
There we go.
So what I meant by that, and I'm willing to just look like a bit of a douchebag here, but it's kind of like be positive. But, you know, a lot of people think that's a bit fluffy. Do it with attitude. You know, positude is like a positive attitude, but it's like, you know, it's like backing yourself, which is kind of like that optimistic realist, right? Kind of two kind of opposing forces coming together to make something better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It's always, anyone who's ever worked with Ben will know how that positivity keeps going through. And I think it's a thing, often it's come up in things in the past in asking for a friend around, like, you've got to be able to see the way out of something for yourself. And you've got to be able to kind of, you know, see where the positivity can be. But I also think that, you know, quite often, if you want to see something that isn't going to work out, then that's what will happen for you. And, you know, you kind of, if you assume something could be great, then actually you're much more likely to kind of see the positive thing come out of it as well. So I think for that person, is, you know, there's definitely a watch out of just making sure that, you know, if you're assuming that you're going to get into something and it's going to be really mundane and boring, then, you know, you may well fall into it. But if you look for something that's a bit more positive and inspiring, then, you know, hopefully that's what you'll find instead.
Can I tell the story of the two-headed wolf? If anybody doesn't know it, it's a good one. You know it, Ben?
No, I don't know. I'm looking at
okay, you're going to like this one, I think. You know what? You are. I'm going to tell myself you are. Positive story. Positude I've got here.
Yeah.
So it's an old fable. Grandma is telling her grandson about the two-headed wolf, right? And one of the heads is really... it's really angry, it's really embittered, it's really frustrated, it's really constricted, it's coming from a place of lack. You get the picture, right? And the other head is a really buoyant, opportunistic, positive, energized, collaborative head, right? Two heads, one body. And the grandson goes, but Granny, which one leads? And she says, the one you feed. You know, so I love that. So simple, but it's true. You know, we tell ourselves a story and then we look for evidence for it. And if you choose to look right instead of left, you'll be amazed that evidence will cascade, right? So just make sure which bit of you you're fueling, because we are all of it, of course. We are positive and negative. We are both confident and collapsed. So you have to really commit to being present with the buoyant part of yourself and parenting the part of you that goes, oh God, that hurt, and go, yeah, okay. Yeah, of course, if you're sensitive, which we are, it will hurt, but let's look for where 3 other people told us something great.
Yeah, and it takes work. It takes work, doesn't it? It doesn't just happen overnight. You have to keep practicing to be able to get better at checking yourself and realizing when you're allowing yourself to kind of spiral out a little bit. And kind of, I love that. I think it's brilliant. And something I read years ago, which still really resonates with me, is thinking of yourself like a radio dial. If you're listening to a station that you don't like, change the station. Remember to go, oh shit, that's me thinking negatively or thinking that I'm catastrophizing about something. Cool. Switch the dial until you find something that you're interested in. Again, easier said than done, right? Easy to kind of shout these things out, but it just takes practice. You need to get better at recognizing when you're moving into a negative thought pattern and how you can actually be one step ahead of it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, with the physical health analogy, right? Let's say that you get yourself into peak fitness and you run a marathon, right? And you ace it, you win it, right? You get a gold at the Olympics, yeah? You're prolific at it. You go home and you go, got that one now. And then you sit back on the couch and you binge Netflix and you eat crap and you don't move for a year. How's your fitness? Right? Same is true with your mental health, right? So these little things, these moments of attunement, of conscious, considered engagement, it could be as simple as 5 minutes in the morning or just a minute in the shower, right? What is my intention today? Intentionality is really strong. What is my intention today? At the end of the day, let me look for, maybe you're a journaler, maybe you're not, write it down, put it in your phone, whatever. What are 2 examples of where I was respected today? Or let me find 2 things that I appreciate about myself. Or what are 2 things that I'm grateful for? Or if you're a creative and you're working on a project, what are the 2 great bits of evidence or the 2 wonderful bits of feedback that I got? Because the tendency will be, the bias will be to feed the 1 criticism. And there's probably 57 people that loved it. And you're focusing over here on this one and not the other 57,
Very true. Okay, Katie.
Okay, stop, Andy. We're just riffing now.
Yeah, I stopped myself then. I was about to build on it and I was like, no, I need to pause. So, yeah,
we need an adjudicator here. Come in, Andy.
That's my job. So, here I go. Katie, how can a creative or freelancer deal with sorrow and extreme stress? I had a close relative pass away a few weeks ago, and I also got some extra stress about my business around that time. It felt like my mind got completely blocked and I got very little done during this time. Any tips on how you could handle these kind of stressful situations, not lose your creative spark and stay in touch with your work more?
Yes. And just before I answer that, to say I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for the loss. And, nothing living stays the same in that we are constantly in a state of evolution, right? So the conversation that we were just having about positivity and buoyancy is true and valid. And yet there will also be times when we need to make space for the sorrow. And so here I would start by asking him or her, if I was sat in front of them, what their expectation of themselves is at this time. Because I imagine that there may be quite a harsh critic whose expectation is that I will show up in exactly the same way, irrespective of this not insignificant loss. So it may be that there needs to be space made for the doing and the creating and the action, and space made for the grief, for the processing of what shifted. And it may be that if you hold that more compassionately and in a less rigid way, and your expectation is, okay, today I have whatever it is. In this block of time, I will do this creative thing which I need to achieve. And then in this period of time, I will allow myself to go in and process what I need to. It may be that this is more easily accessed because there's a permission piece over here for all of it. So we must hold our stories with compassion and not criticism. And quite often, you know, it's interesting that it's called, you know, asking for a friend. We would give a friend very different advice than we would give ourselves. You know, I'm sure whoever wrote this question, if their friend were in the same position, they would be incredibly empathetic. And they may say to their friend, you're doing the best you can. You're doing really well. Look at what you have achieved. Whereas I imagine the narrative to themselves is far more critical than that. So I would say that there is a seasonality to everything, and we need to make space absolutely for the curation of our joy, and we need to make space for the integration of some of the lesser, more painful experiences of our lives.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I might just jump in just from a personal perspective again. I know I keep kind of bringing myself into the situation, but my dad passed away 2 years ago, and it was really, really difficult time. You know, it's everybody responds and reacts to things differently, so I can only talk from my perspective. And I think it's such a confusing period of time where you're just trying to process so many things. You don't even realize what your brain's processing because it's your subconscious, you're not aware of it, but you're feeling things, your emotions are everywhere. And again, the way I responded to that was obviously I was really upset, and but I really allowed the grief to pour out of me. You know, like I wasn't afraid of crying in front of someone, a colleague or a friend. And I felt for me, it was good to talk about it, to tell people like I'm feeling this way, or I'd tell stories about my dad, and it would, like, even now it makes me a bit emotional. But how I responded to it was to enable that feeling to fuel me, to find a project that I really cared about. And at the time we were working on a project for Huffer, which is a fashion brand. And it gave me the freedom. I asked for the respect of my colleagues. I said, I need to, you know, usually I'm across a million things, but I said, I need to go quite deep into this project because I want to lose myself in this project. And that's what's tricky with that is, are you from the situation, or am I channeling my emotion into something that I care about? So I don't have the answer to that, but it definitely helped me through it to have something I cared about. And when I came back out, I processed what I wanted to, but then I went back in to focus on putting my passion into something else. And of course, feeling my dad in there with me. So I'm not sure if that helps, but that's just from my perspective.
Mate, I'm sure that really does help. And thank you for sharing. Because obviously it's, you know, it's hard talking about stuff like that. And sorry to hear about your dad. But I'm sure that's helped, you know, a bunch of people around how to deal with things. And also to know that, you know, there's leaders in our industry that will come out and say, look, this is how I'm feeling right now, and this is what I need. And I think like we need more people to be able to have the confidence to be able to do that. So yeah, thank you for sharing. A little bit, you know, much more practical question before we get into the questions that have just come in. So there's a few that are starting to line up now. But this last one is, I've been working with a client for a while now, and the results from the work are flatlining. I'm struggling to stay motivated. Any tips, Ben?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Clients can be the best and they can be the absolute worst, all in one day, in a week, in a month. So what do you do when you have a tricky client? It is very hard. I suppose it's kind of similar to what we talked about earlier, about how you decide to respond to something, how you view how they're being potentially critical or negative about something. Do you take it, just sort of get into a kind of negative spin of like, how am I ever going to get past this? It's just, I just want to give up, which is a very natural thing to do, right? So again, it's probably trying to have that self-belief, doing the things Katie talked about earlier, going for a walk, switching gears, getting fresh inspiration, reaching out to that friend of yours who's inspiring, reaching out to that friend of you who might be able to give you a different perspective. But then again, challenging yourself to think differently about the problem in front of you. Why do they not like it? What are their drivers? It's really good to put yourself in their shoes. What's driving them to not like what you're giving them? What are they trying to get to? Who are they answering up to? Do they have people above them that don't like it? Or are they second guessing the people above them? Or is it, so it's analyzing, taking yourself out of that situation that's right in front of you, giving yourself the mental space to have a break and come back to it, and then thinking about it from their perspective. Put yourself in their shoes, try and understand what's driving them, and then try to come back with a new creative response. Again, so many different ways of approaching it, but that's just one kind of mental model of thinking about how to kind of cope with it.
Great. Anything you want to add, Katie? Keeping things fresh?
Look, I don't know. I know that I certainly can't speak to the creative process, but I can speak to managing self, and I can speak to managing conflict. And I hear there's a bit of conflict. You think you're getting it the right way, and they don't think you're getting it the right way. Is that kind of where we are with the question, with presenting something and they're not sure? And there's always three energies in any conversation, right? There's mine, there's yours, and there's the co-creative space in the middle. And I'm a huge believer in honesty and transparency and authenticity. And that probably sounds something like, hey, Andy, this isn't converting in the way that I would normally expect it to. What's here for you? Because I'm going to be better informed when I understand more about your process, and then I'm going to be more likely to get it right. And I'm also going to feel more empowered, because it's going to be out in the open. It's not going to be a hidden something that I don't know.
Great. Okay. Well, we're moving on now to questions that have come in from people that are watching. So the first question is, any advice on how to market yourself better when going for a startup position with minimal experience? To Ben, I think this is sort of we'll come to you first.
So so it's a marketing position at a startup, right?
I think it's how to market yourself. So I think this is like almost kind of personal branding type thing when going for a startup position with minimal experience.
And I imagine for a design role potentially.
Yeah.
So, again, what are the drivers of the person that's interviewing you? They're all in, fast and furious, massive self-belief, big ambition to be the next unicorn. So what are they looking for? They're looking for somebody who is resilient, who is going to be passionate, who is adaptable, has curiosity to kind of, go beyond the brief in front of them, and be self-motivated, right? You want people, when you're a founder or you're a startup, you've got a million meetings, you're investor pitches, you're talking to people here. So kind of showing that you don't need to be told what to do. You want to have where the direction of business is heading, and I'm just going to run with you. I'm going to make your life easy. I'm going to kind of try and push things forward. So again, I think it comes back to that passion, the fact that you understand their business inside out, you've done your homework, you're walking in there, you've looked at the competitors, you understand the white space that they're trying to operate in, and you're thinking strategically just as much as creatively, and there's a restless pursuit to make their life better, and you're on the journey to push things forward. Collaboration, if I wanted to add a few more words in there, but you probably get the drift.
I think that's the perfect advice. Like I've started an agency, and I remember the first person we hired was all of those things. She was like the perfect support. Like she was part of the team, at the beginning, not someone that was there to do, just 9 to 5 and tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. It was someone that was part of everything that we were trying to achieve, understood where we were trying to get to. And, 1 minute you might be doing something that's completely in your comfort zone, and the next minute you're just helping out. And doing something you've never done before. And I think that's the type of, like, if you can market yourself like that, then you'll be in a good spot. So great advice.
And I suppose it doesn't stop for a startup. That's kind of what, that's the ideal candidate anywhere, isn't it? And it just so happens that, startups might be really looking for that. But if you can demonstrate that attitude, that adaptability, that collaborative mindset, you're going to do well anywhere.
Yeah, brilliant.
Mindset's key on that one too. You spoke a lot about them and what they need. What do you need to be your best self going in, right? Write a 50 stack, 50 ideas, 50 reasons why I'm great, 50 reasons why I believe in myself, 50 reasons why they should hire me. Right? Write it down, right? Get it in your body, get it in your, attitude. Wear something you feel great in. Talk well to yourself. Be a cheerleader, a supporter. Go in an empowered place, right? Because we are reading everything in communication. We're reading body language, we're reading tonality, we're reading energy, we're reading all of it. So, don't gift the whole thing over to them. Spend a good amount of time the morning of getting yourself fully centered in your greatness, in your glory, and in your power. Different to ego. I'm not suggesting you go in cocky, but do go in empowered.
Yeah, and that's brilliant as well. Like knowing what you want. I mean, I'm sure, Ben, you've had this as well, but I would have interviewed so many people who don't really know what they want, and that makes it really hard to hire someone because they, are you there to help them try and find out what they want? Is this like some sort of stepping stone to just trial and see? And it's, that doesn't make you really want to, sometimes you will put the effort in, but also there's 100 things you want to do. And hopefully this person's coming in, taking load off you, not adding to it.
Yeah. I mean, I just love all those responses. And I think it's like, it's believing in yourself, isn't it? And it's whatever you need to do to believe in yourself. I love some of the things Kate was just talking about, like even building up to a conversation like this. Doesn't matter who you are. If you care about what you do, you still even free this conversation like, oh, God, how am I going to come across? What am I going to say? How do I do it? And it's just freezing your mind for a second and go, cool. Believing all the little mental models that Katie just talked about, like looking at yourself for a second and going, oh, you got this. You can do this. Reminding yourself of really positive things that you've achieved in your life and going, cool, I've done it then. I've got over this hurdle. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to smash it. And really sort of just reminding yourself and practicing that. Again, don't wait till the half an hour before. Practice it in every situation. Like, okay, I'm just going to push myself to believe in myself here. I'm going to push myself to kind of step out of my comfort zone a little bit. It is all about practice. And before you know it, it becomes a habit.
Yeah, great. Katie, I'm going to come to you with this one. Any tips on overcoming imposter syndrome and perfectionism, also known as my nemesis?
Yes. And I read this question because I'm in the questions thing, and I'm going to speak to it, and then I'm going to offer a solution that I've never offered before. In my clinic, I usually do it differently. But given that I'm speaking to a load of creative people, I think I might have a new one. I'm going on the fly, so go with me here. But look, so the first thing to say is everybody's heard of whole foods, right? Which is holistic, which is all of it. And I sort of alluded to it earlier. The human experience is all of it. You are confident and insecure. You are loving and hateful, right? And so what's happening with imposter syndrome is that one of those voices is louder than the other. So the voice of what we would call the inner critic, or the voice of disempowerment, or the voice of less than, is shouting greater than the voice of you've got this. So what you need to do is make space for both, okay? When you try and push something away, you're actually applying pressure to it, and in a way you're making it stronger, because when you push back on something, it pushes back, right? Same is true of your emotional world. So as a group of creatives, here's my challenge, right? And I would love, if anyone wants to share it with me, to see how you guys do this, right? I want you to get, in my mind, it's a huge piece of paper. Maybe you do it differently. And I want you to let both of those voices express, both of them, right? So if you're more identified at the moment with the imposter syndrome, with the less than, go into it. What's it saying? What does it sound like? What's the tonality? What's the quality of it? What's the color of it? What's the density of it? What is it? What is fully there? Go for it, let rip. Shake it out and go to its cousin, its polarity, its opposite. Tell me all the reasons why you're great, because you know they're in there too, right? Then I want you to stand back. It's like a neutral position. Look at these two aspects of yourself that are dialoguing, and there you'll get the information as to how to bring them closer together and how to manage the one that's telling you you're less than.
Brilliant. You might have just nailed the best imposter syndrome answer that we've had on asking for a friend. It does come up a lot, and it is something obviously that people are always struggling with. So that was excellent. Ben, I know you will also feel it every now and again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is just the reality, is that everybody, I think anyway, will feel it at some point. And you're usually feeling it when you're pushing yourself the most. So when you're in your comfort zone, where there's nothing wrong with being in your comfort zone if that's where you want to be, but you do tend to feel it when you push yourself out of your comfort zone. And therefore, it's kind of accepting that it's a reality to some extent. And then it's how, again, you respond to it. And I think I still get it, everybody gets it at different periods, because you might be working on something that's really hard, or you've got a massive presentation, or you're talking to someone who's just incredibly smart, and you start to think, oh God, how am I going to handle this conversation? Do I have the skills to do it? And you know what, also, I tend to find when I'm doing that, that's me, without me even realizing, problem solving, how I'm actually going to succeed, or how I'm actually going to do the things I need to do. So there's an element of embracing it a teeny bit, because that anxiety is driving you to do something about it, but just trying to keep that in check and not letting the anxiety to kind of overrule your brain to be able to think. But it is partly a response to you trying to solve the problem.
Brilliant. Ben, I'm going to keep with you. Is it better to specialize as a creative or be a jack of many trades, even skills outside of the creative field?
I think it's a brilliant question, because it's very topical to the world we're living in right now. I think it's important to be a specialist, but I think it's important to think beyond your specialism. So I'm brilliant at X, but I'm curious about all of these things. Therefore, if you need me to do the job, I can do it really, really well. But I'm fascinated by all these other things, and I have a learner mindset, which means you put something in front of me that I don't quite know how to do it, I'll go away and figure out how to do it, because I'm curious enough to want to do it. So I do think it's important to have a specialism. Up to you how deep you want to go, but then make sure you are curious enough to make sure that you can blend, because if there's one thing that's certain right now, everything is constantly changing. Roles are adapting. And that's really exciting. So it's just being, aware of that and constantly being open to change. So get the specialism, but then in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, you might have moved out of that role, but you're still going to have that skill set.
Yeah, great. Next question. We got 7 minutes left, and we got two questions to get through. Maybe some more. We'll see. All three. Burnout. Often a topic that does come up in this forum. Any thoughts on dealing with burnout? 30 years creating, as passionate as ever, still learning and pivoting as needed, but find myself procrastinating on new jobs. What are your thoughts? Katie, do you want to tackle burnout first?
Sure. So burnout is expelling energy. So as much as you're doing things which are energy, an expellation of energy, what are you doing to top yourself up? It's like this water. If I pour it out and pour it out and pour it out and continue to pour it, at some point that glass will be empty. Well, if my expectation is that I can infinitely pour without ever stopping and topping it back up again, at some point that will no longer work. So you must look for the counterbalance, and the counterbalance lies in nurturement of self. Whatever the expression of that is for you, whether it is doing more self-work, whether it is exercise, whether it is good food, whether it is rest. It's counterintuitive when you're exhausted, but you must stop and replenish your resources so that you can step back in.
I think an important part of this, the person who's asked this question, is that they recognize that they might be experiencing burnout, because it's really easy to just kind of fly through and then actually hit the end of it, and it takes a long time to recover from. There is, I think, a mutual friend of all of ours, actually, Sean Hall, who runs a business called Energy X, and we'll often talk about energy vampires and the things that will suck energy out of you. And sometimes that's people, but sometimes it is, the situation that you're in and the work that you're doing. And so it's important to kind of recognize where those energy vampires are. And I think what you just said, Katie, about filling yourself back up is really important. Like you've got to be able to find things that give you energy, not just sap your energy. Ben, burnout?
Whew, I think it's probably it's like, for me, it's probably the hardest question today, because I think it's just so prevalent in our industry, and it's so hard to actually know what the absolute answer to it is, because again, it's obviously very different for every single person. But in our industry, it tends to be very project based, which means we are on to the next project, on to the next project, on to the next project. And again, when you care about something, you want to put everything you've got into it. And you're putting you into it. You're literally putting you into it. It's something you care about. So again, you've got the kind of physical tiredness and the mental tiredness and the emotional tiredness. And so I don't have the answers to it, because it's something that, we all experience. Myself, setting up a new practice in a pandemic, 15 months into it, hardest and most exciting 15 months of my life. Like, I'm running pretty close to empty. So I know even myself, I have to try to figure out, well, what do I need to do about this? Because, and I don't totally have the answers. And I think because there's always something else I've got to get onto. There's always something else I'm excited about. And it depends where you're at in your career and what you're doing. But it is, if you can, knowing when to say no, knowing when to say, oh, I could do that, but are you going to get the best out of me because I'm stretching myself too thin? We all stretch ourselves too thin. And again, if you're a people pleaser, you're going to try and stretch yourself until you break. And being a people pleaser is not a bad thing, but then you've got to know when you have to say no. It's something I'm working with myself, is like knowing when to say no. And again, practicing to say no, because at first it feels uncomfortable. Oh, I've just said no to that person. What are they going to think? And actually, they'll find another way. They'll find somebody else, because they get it. And if you're transparent and you're telling somebody why you need to say no, i.e., hey, I'm not going to be able to give you the best thing you want here because I've got X, Y, and Z going on. So I think, again, I can only really talk from my perspective, and it's often about being too stretched and trying to do everything and getting better at saying no to give yourself that space. And again, a theme that keeps coming up is, when you are switching off, making sure you're doing the positive things to give yourself an ability to recharge. And sleep, which I'm really shit at the moment, but sleep is so important. I don't know if you saw that IKEA advert recently that was talking about, it was beauty products. And really what it said is, you don't need all those things, you just need more sleep. And I think sleep is and I'm being a complete hypocrite here because I'm not getting enough sleep, but it's something that I'm trying to work on. And I think sleep is really, really important.
Actually, I think you did give us the answer, Ben. You kept saying, I don't know the answer. You did. I wrote it down. When you care about something, you want to put everything into it. I just encourage all of us to care about ourselves, because I hear an awful lot of love and energy and focus and commitment being given to everything outside of ourselves. We must bring ourselves into the picture. In fact, we must be forefront. Continue to care about work. Continue to care about your partner or your spouse or your children or your family or your dog or all these other people that are demanding of you. Yes, keep that. And then, who is that? You. This must be the receiver of that same level of commitment and that same level of putting everything into it, because you must care about yourself.
And then you answered it again by having that support network, which is what this is all about. Having somebody else to kind of just tap you on the shoulder and remind you that there's a different way of thinking about it. So, it kind of comes full circle. It's look after yourself, but remember to reach out to other people.
I think that is the perfect spot to end. It is 1:30, and I'm going to say thank you so much to both of you. It's been great, like so much honesty, as well as like really practical advice. So thank you very much for sharing that. don't forget, anyone who's watching, Asking for a Friend is on first Thursday of every month. If you want to check out past sessions, they're all recorded. They're all up on the site. I just put the link in the chat there. And that'll be it for another month. So first Thursday of next month. Thank you again so much. Brilliant to have you both on board. And thank you for sharing. Very grateful.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.